Day 6 in the Sahara Desert. Mauro Prosperi stumbles into an abandoned shrine. A Muslim prayer house, forgotten by time, half buried in sand. Inside, it's dark, cool. A temporary escape from the relentless sun. He's been lost for 6 days. 6 days drinking his own urine. 6 days watching his body slowly shut down. His lips are cracked and bleeding. His tongue is so swollen he can barely close his mouth. Every breath feels like inhaling fire. The pain is unbearable. He finds something in the shrine, something he can use. And in that moment of absolute desperation, he makes a decision. A final decision. He expects darkness. He expects release. But it doesn't come. He looks down and sees almost nothing. No blood flow. Just a few drops of thick, dark sludge that immediately clot at the wound. His body is so dehydrated, so depleted, that his blood has turned into a viscous paste. It refuses to flow. His body, in its primitive desperation to survive, is forcefully refusing to let him die. This is Mauro Prosperi, and this is how he survived 9 days in hell. This isn't a scene from a psychological horror movie. This is a documented medical reality. What Mauro endured, and the horrifying things he had to do to survive the endless dunes, will completely shatter your understanding of human endurance. Welcome to the Discovery Vault. Today, we are opening the file on the man who cheated death in the sea of sand. The year is 1994. The location is the Moroccan Sahara. To understand how Mauro got into this nightmare, you first have to understand the monster he was trying to conquer. The Marathon des Sables, widely known as the toughest foot race on Earth. We are not talking about a normal marathon. This is a 156-mile ultramarathon spread across 6 grueling days in one of the most hostile climates known to man. Competitors must carry everything they need to survive on their backs. Their sleeping bags, their freeze-dried food, anti-venom pumps for snake bites, and distress flares. The only thing the organizers provide is a strict daily ration of water. If you drink it too fast, you dehydrate. If you don't drink enough, you collapse. Mauro Prosperi was a 39-year-old Italian police officer and a former Olympic pentathlete. He was in peak physical condition, a machine of discipline and endurance. He had trained for months, running 25 miles a day, restricting his water intake to prepare his body for the shock of the desert. When he arrived at the starting line, he was confident. He was ready. For the first 3 days, Mauro was an absolute force of nature. He was navigating the massive sand dunes, some as high as 50-story buildings, with the agility of a local. He was placing in the top tier of runners. Everything was going perfectly according to plan. But the Sahara is not a track you can memorize. It is a living, breathing entity. And on day 4, the desert decided to remind the runners who was truly in charge. It started as a faint whisper of wind, picking up tiny grains of sand that stung his legs. Within minutes, the sky turned a bruised, sickening shade of yellow. Out of nowhere, a massive, violent sandstorm, a phenomenon the locals call a simoom, swallowed the desert whole. Winds howling at over 60 miles per hour created a blinding, impenetrable wall of dust. The temperature plummeted. The sand felt like thousands of tiny needles piercing through Mauro's clothing. The strict rules of the race are crystal clear for this exact scenario. If a severe sandstorm hits, you must stop immediately. You pitch your emergency tent, cover your face, and wait for it to pass. Moving in zero visibility means death. But Mauro was running on pure adrenaline. His competitive nature blinded his judgment. He wrapped a scarf tightly around his face and decided to keep moving, convinced he could follow the faint trail left by the runners ahead of him. That single adrenaline-fueled decision would cost him everything. The storm didn't last an hour. It raged on for 8 agonizing hours. Mauro marched through the blinding chaos, totally unaware that he was drifting further and further away from the safety of the marked route. When the winds finally died down and the dust began to settle, Mauro unwrapped his face and looked around. The world had gone dead silent. The landscape had completely transformed. The massive dunes he was using as visual landmarks had been flattened and reshaped by the wind. The trail was gone. He pulled out his compass, but the storm had spun him completely around. A sickening realization washed over him. He was no longer on the race route. He was standing alone in a vast, empty ocean of sand. As the sun began to set, casting long, terrifying shadows across the desert floor, Mauro made his first camp alone. He assumed that when the sun rose, a rescue helicopter would easily spot him. But as dawn broke on day 5, the real panic set in. He only had half a bottle of water left. He started walking toward a distant mountain range, believing it was the race checkpoint. In reality, he was marching straight into the deep, unpopulated abyss of Algeria. By the end of his first full day lost, the temperature soared to 120 degrees Fahrenheit. The half bottle of water was gone. This is where the human body begins its desperate fight for survival. When you run out of water in extreme heat, your heart has to beat dangerously fast just to keep your thickening blood moving. Your kidneys shut down to prevent any moisture from escaping. Wandering aimlessly, Mauro's vision began to blur. Then, in the distance, he spotted something unnatural, a structure. He pushed his exhausted legs toward it and found a marabut, an old, abandoned Muslim shrine in the middle of nowhere. It offered precious shade from the lethal sun, but it held absolutely no water. Mauro knew he couldn't stay there forever, but he was too weak to walk during the day. He had to wait for the cooler night. But thirst is a primal, aggressive monster. To stay alive, Mauro had to cross boundaries that most civilized humans couldn't even stomach. He took his empty plastic bottle and urinated into it. The liquid was dark brown and thick. He forced himself to drink it. But by the next day, his body was so dry that it stopped producing urine entirely. Looking up at the dark wooden ceiling of the abandoned shrine, he heard a faint fluttering sound. A small colony of desert bats was sleeping in the rafters. Driven by an absolute primitive desperation, Mauro climbed up and grabbed handfuls of the small creatures. He twisted their heads off with his bare hands and drank their blood to moisten his cracked throat. He dug in the sand for beetles, swallowing them alive. He even caught a small desert lizard, eating it raw. But these desperate measures barely put a dent in his lethal dehydration. He was hallucinating. He saw visions of his family sitting in the shrine with him. His body was cannibalizing its own fat and muscle, causing him to lose over 30 pounds in just a few days. That moment broke Mauro Prosperi. The psychological torture of having salvation ripped away from him was too much. He retreated back into the dark shrine. He found a piece of charcoal from his burned backpack and wrote a goodbye note to his wife and children on the rough stone wall. Then, the sheer exhaustion finally overthrew him. His organs were shutting down. In a state of absolute delirium, he collapsed violently against the sharp, jagged stones of the ancient shrine, sustaining a severe, deep wound. Too weak to move, he laid there in the sand, accepting his fate, waiting for the darkness to take him. But the Sahara wasn't done with him yet. Any normal person would have bled out from the fall. But instead of dying, his blood, now stripped of almost all its fluids, had turned into a thick, dark sludge. It instantly clotted at the wound. His body, operating on pure primitive survival instinct, forcefully refused to let him die. When he opened his eyes the next morning, he was shocked to find he was still breathing. He took it as a divine sign. He was meant to live. He gathered his remaining strength, stood up, and looked at the horizon. He saw faint clouds. Nomads know that clouds mean moisture, and moisture means life. He started walking. For 2 more days, Mauro walked like a skeletal ghost through the Algerian desert. He had wandered nearly 180 miles off the original racecourse. On day 9, his blurred vision picked up movement. A young nomadic Tuareg girl was tending to a small flock of goats. When she saw him, she ran away in terror. He looked like a walking corpse. But she led him straight to her tribe's camp. The nomads knew exactly what to do. They didn't give him a massive cup of water, which would have shocked his system and killed him. They gave him tiny sips of goat's milk and called the military police. When Mauro was finally airlifted to a hospital, the doctors were absolutely stunned. His liver had almost completely failed. His eyes had sunken deep into his skull. He was quite literally hours away from complete organ failure and death. It took months of liquid diets and intense medical care for his body to recover. But Mauro Prosperi survived the impossible. And the craziest part of this entire story? A few years later, he signed up and ran the Marathon des Sables again. Now, I have to ask you, if you were lost in the desert for 5 days with no water, what is the absolute most extreme thing you would do to survive? Let me know in the comments below. If you love incredible true stories of survival and the mysteries of human resilience, make sure to hit that subscribe button for the Discovery Vault. I'll see you in the next mystery.